Here's how to manage your Kundalini Awakening symptoms. All right, when it comes to looking at Kundalini Awakening, one thing I don't see talked about way enough is how do you manage your ascension symptoms? How do you manage your symptoms of awakening? Now, when it comes to looking at Kundalini, in the beginning, it can make you feel crazy. It can make you feel overwhelmed. You can have lots of emotional overwhelm. You can have all sorts of different symptoms. But here's the thing. When it comes to looking at these symptoms, are we asking ourselves better questions so that we can learn how to manage them properly? That's what we're going to talk about this week. Let's get started. Hey guys, it is Ashley from theawakenstate.net. And I really want to mention here that when it comes to looking at managing our symptoms, wow, this is not talked about enough. And I was thinking about that as I did some own personal research into the topic. And I noticed that there isn't a lot of talk out there about how do we manage our symptoms or heal our symptoms for that matter. In fact, many times if I were to answer put this question out in a message board or a Facebook group, message board. Okay. When we think about like a Facebook group where you can just ask these questions, like a lot of people will be like, that isn't possible. There isn't no way that this could work. And I actually got like some hate for just like suggesting that they can heal their symptoms. So I think it's interesting how we almost shun away and deflect the fact that we can manage and heal our own symptoms when it comes to this process of Kundalini awakening and spiritual awakening. And I think when it comes to looking at Kundalini, a lot of times it can feel very intimidating, especially because it's not a very subtle shift. It's a very drastic, overnight light switch flick when it comes to your symptoms. And most importantly, when we have a Kundalini awakening, it isn't subtle at all. And a lot of the times Kundalini itself can be a little bit jarring on our nervous system because there's so many rapid changes happening behind the scenes. Now, here's the thing. When it comes to looking at managing our symptoms, when we think about symptoms, a lot of us most of the time just think about the physical symptoms that are happening, such as, having a stomach ache or getting the flu or feeling like you have a headache coming on. I want to take it a little bit further and go even deeper into some of the more surreal and let's call it paranormal symptoms that we can often experience when it comes to spiritual and Kundalini awakening. Now, just for simplicity, I'm going to start just saying Kundalini awakening because it's annoying. Okay, so when we look at Kundalini awakening, the number one thing that is really, really common is having temporary psychic phenomena and experiences happening. And a lot of the times when this occurs, we often freak out or we just think it's coincidence. But when this happens, one of the number one things you can do to manage your symptoms is to work on your intuition. Because here's the thing. The reason why this is happening is because it's showing your intuitive gifts. It's showing your intuitive gifts. If you were to just look at how when you have temporary psychic phenomena kind of happen to you, it's showing you a glimpse into your own psychic potential. It's showing you your personal intuitive gifts. So the best thing you can do when this starts to happen is to start working on strengthening your intuition like a muscle. I want you to start working on your intuition. Start powering that intuition. Start looking at how you can start to increase those intuition skills. If you need help with this, we have a membership which talks all about intuition mastery and how you can get started today. And also I have some videos on intuition that you can dive into right after this one. Now, the next thing I want to say is another common thing that often happens is spontaneous past life experiences are almost like regressions, where we start to have a moment where we feel like we're out of time and we're out of place and we're in that kind of quantum-y space of like feeling almost like an astral experience of where we're tapping into a past life experience. When this happens, a lot of the times Kundalini Awakening can bring those things to surface so that we rapidly clear them. It isn't something to dwell on. It's not something to fixate on. And it's also not something to carry with you like, I'm reincarnated Cleopatra. Yeah, no, don't go into that headspace, but rather process and release. Process and release. I think this is one of those weird ones that isn't really like, a lot of people go down elaborate rabbit holes about this entire concept. And I think it's just silly because it's coming up for a reason so that you process and heal it. That's it. Just process, release, process, release. One thing that's another really common one when it comes to managing our symptoms is receiving downloads. When we receive downloads or intuitive insight or sudden epiphanies or aha moments, I want you to take a minute here to write those down, to record it on your iPhone, or just allow yourself to soak in that moment of what is being received because it's coming up for a reason. Now, when we're first new to the journey, I know these things can be kind of jarring or scary because we're not used to the sensations of having a random download happen. And I think when we say the term download, it's kind of like this moment where we receive a huge insight of information, like a mental orgasm, because it feels kind of like you were fine a moment ago, and then all of a sudden, I should do that. That sensation, I want you to write it down, get a journal, put it in a note app, record it, record those insights immediately because that will help you in life. The reason why they show up is they are helping guide you. They are from your intuition. They are from higher self. They are showing you the pathway. Understanding downloads is so powerful because it helps you in life move forward. If you just ignore them, if you just shut them down, if you just kind of like, that was weird, I'm going to ignore that, it will show up louder and it will show up louder again until you listen because that's how it works often. Now, when it comes to looking at those downloads and making sure that you were recording them, I highly recommend that you also look at what can you do in terms of an action or an insight forward because it's probably showing you how to take an aligned action and how to take an aligned action from your intuition forward. Moving on. Another one that is actually really common and a lot of people just either think they're crazy, they're emotionally overwhelmed, or they just think they're losing it is experiencing a Kundalini Kriya or basically shaking. Now, a lot of the times this happens during a Kundalini Awakening because we have an excess amount of energy and our body is trying to release it. So what instead occurs is we have a moment of spontaneous movement, and it can freak the fuck out of people because it's a very weird experience where it almost like you have a tingling body sensation of spontaneous movement where like your hands suddenly like shaking or something, and then it goes away just as fast. This sensation of a Kundalini Kriya is actually about releasing energy. So the best thing you can do is breathe deeply in through the nose, pranayama style, or embrace more mindful movement because a lot of the times that excess energy is coming up because we're not embracing more mindful movement within our spiritual practice. And I find, again, this is a mind-body connection problem where a lot of the times we only do the head work, but we're not doing the body work. And as a result, we have a bunch of excess energy that needs to be released and moved through the body. And not to get on a side tangent here, but that is a thing. Have you ever had that experience before happen to you where you might have had spontaneous movement or you felt like you needed to release energy? This is actually pretty common when it comes to Kundalini Awakening because there's so much going on. There's so much going on. There's so much being released and downloaded, and you're going through this massive life shift of evolving your consciousness, and there's just so many different things. And because of that, you need to release that excess energy from your body. And when we don't do that, sometimes we can experiencing the shaking and the kriyas. And you can also, you can Google this and look this up further, but just in general, it's about releasing energy. Moving on, the one thing that we didn't talk about, which is more common, But it's often not said in this simplistic way. When we have mental and emotional shifts, two things are happening. One, they're coming up for clearing, and two, they are often about releasing energy. So a lot of times when we have physical symptoms that accompany mental and emotional symptoms, we talk about this a lot with the ascension symptoms, heart opening symptoms, where we have like the emotional overwhelm, or we have a lot of that spontaneous, like feeling kind of heady and spacey. All these things are coming up usually so that you will work on them and heal them. Now, I like to say when it comes to looking at this in depth, it's important to isolate it by a particular chakra. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, usually 9 times out of 10, we have a particular symptom coming up in a particular energy center. And then the more that we can isolate it, the easier it is to heal it. So for example, when you feel dizzy and ungrounded and unsafe, a lot of times that's the root chakra. So you need to do root work. If you have a lot of heart opening symptoms, it means it's time to work on the heart center, and so forth. So you can start to see here, like when we have a bunch of like communication issues coming up, that is the sign to work on the throat chakra. And starting to notice how you can isolate all your symptoms by a particular chakra makes it so much easier to heal it or clear it, because you're not just flowing through the motions here of like, I don't know what to do. Instead, you're allowing yourself to manage those symptoms properly by going into, how can I heal this? Okay, it's coming up here. All right, so I need to work on that particular chakra, and so forth. One of the other things that we didn't mention is overstimulation. Overstimulation and anxiety and fear kind of go a little bit hand in hand. They're a little bit different, but when we're overstimulated, the best thing you can do, especially as a sensitive, who's sensitive to energy, who's an energy reader, who's a hyper empathy kind of person, anything like that, you need to have a recharging space that is just for you, so you can again release energy. So you're noticing a theme here. A lot of the times when we have a lot of symptoms to manage, 9 times out of 10, it's about releasing. It's about releasing work. But in general, when it comes to overstimulation, where we have overstimulation to environments or to particular situations, or we're feeling everybody's everything, this overstimulation that's coming up with Kundalini, because it's very taxing on the nervous system, the hugest thing we personally can do is start to create some boundaries, have some recharging spaces, work on our energy management, and so forth. Really getting clear on your energy management skills is so important, especially if you're an empath or a highly sensitive person. Learning how to manage your energy is personally a vital skill, because it helps you know how to create energetic boundaries and how to understand your energy body. And most importantly, when it comes to energy management, we also need to look at, how can you personally understand your core vibration? So this is something we go really heavily into our monthly membership. But one thing I also wanted to say was the top things that can help you when it comes to managing your energy are strengthening your intuition, energy management skills, and most importantly, learning how to do releasing work. When it comes to looking at releasing work, we also need to focus on one more thing, which is questioning. Questioning our negative resistance, questioning our negative stories, questioning our symptoms, questioning and being aware. Here's the thing. When it comes to looking at these symptoms, I could keep going on and on because there's so many different ones. But at the end of the day, the main components of what is happening is about your intuition, learning how to manage your energy, learning how to be consciously aware, and also learning how to question your negative stories, your negative emotions, questioning your negative symptoms as they appear, because this is showing you how to bring awareness to your personal misalignment. A lot of the times, what we aren't really saying is that when we have to manage our symptoms and we're saying, how do I cope? How do I cope? How do I cope? A lot of the things, what's happening behind the scenes is you are misaligned, and you have misaligned energy that either needs to be healed, It needs to be worked on energy management. You need to work on your intuitive skills and so forth. So you can start to see that there's a reason why this is happening, and how you can personally start to manage it easier is through going through this particular process. Okay, so when it comes to looking at these core symptoms, what particular one stood out to you the most? I would love to hear it in the chat. And most importantly, when it comes to managing your symptoms, the number one thing I want you to ask yourself is, how can I bring more awareness to these symptoms? Because that will help you a ton with not wandering aimlessly, kind of like freaking out about the symptoms and so forth, but rather questioning them, bringing them into awareness, knowing that you can have your own set of tools to heal and manage them and so forth, because it's so, so powerful. All right. So I hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode, and make sure you hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.